afternoon, everyone. How you doing? Chef AJ here with today's live. If you're coming to me for the first time, ever since the sheltering in place started, I've been going live at least once a day just to get a sense of community for people and to talk to interesting people. And today I have from local Spicery, Nick Davoren. And if you don't know what local Spicery is, you're going to find out, but it really is my favorite seasonings because he has such an array of incredible salt-free seasonings. We're going to show you some of them. I can't cook with them right now because of where I am. We're going to show them to you. We're going to talk about them, talk about why they're different. And let me introduce Nick from local Spicery. Welcome. Thank you so much for taking your time to be here.
Thanks for inviting me, AJ. I've been watching your AJ lives since you've started them, and it's a great way to reconnect when we're all trying to stay indoors.
Well, thank you. And one of the things I want to show you guys is we're going to talk about his spices, but one of the coolest things he just developed are these. And what they are is recipes from my book where everything is already measured out. So for example, these are two of my most popular recipes, my nutrient-rich black bean soup, my red lentil chili. And he has it, it's just so cute. Look at the little back. The back says this. I love this. And then you open it up and you've got it already pre-measured with the recipe on it. So isn't that incredible? I think it's incredible. Where did you get that great idea?
You know, I'll give full credit to my wife, who really came up with the idea and did the full implementation. She does basically all of our graphics, and I mean, anything that looks good, she's responsible for. We wanted to, you know, for us, we try to look high end but still crafty. We wanted to do something that was very, very customizable. And these things we can produce right here in the shop. If we you know, wanted to produce 1,000, we could easily print 1,000 and get them done that way. But we can make them say anything we want to make them say. And we're you know, we'll get into this a little later in this discussion, but we're going to be challenged heavily this year with the impacts of this coronavirus, and we have to be very nimble and able to change things quickly, and it fits well.
How is the coronavirus impacting your business? I know we had Thomas from California Balsamic, and all he can do right now is mail order because his bulk of his business was doing festivals.
Yeah. So, you know, for us, the hit's about the same as it was for Thomas, but it's different for us. We made the decision to close down both of our stores. In the state of California, we are classified as an essential business. Legally, we could have kept the stores open, but just looking at the situation that the state was in and looking at the risk to people and to ourselves, we thought that the right thing to do was to shut the stores down. We were thankful that we had a robust online presence, and a number of people have graciously moved over and are ordering more online.
Well, hopefully to people that aren't familiar with your quality spices, we'll give you a more robust online presence. We have somebody all the way from Israel watching. I don't know if you ship to Israel, but if you are celebrating Passover tonight, happy Passover to everyone, by the way. And we have somebody all the way from Mexico and Hungary. That's incredible. And Pat wants to know, any chance of shipping to Canada or other countries?
Not just yet. We've had problems with shipping overseas. It's difficult for us to get the providers to guarantee what the price is going to be, and the cost ends up being very high. So right now we're still trying to get good at shipping in the United States. It could be something we look at, but I don't think it's something we're going to be doing this year.
Well, tonight in Passover, well, obviously people aren't going to get together. They're doing a lot of what they call the Seder on Zoom. But one of the things we say when we say the 4 questions is, why is tonight different than all other nights? So I'm going to ask you, Nick, why are your spices different, and in my opinion, better than all other spices?
So it's a number of things, but really what it comes from is our core commitment. When we started this business, the whole purpose behind the business was that we thought that there was a niche missing for people making extremely high quality spices. And so what defines high quality spices? It begins with the best product. So it begins with sourcing and getting the highest quality from the onset. Everything that we purchase has to be all natural, nothing that's been irradiated, nothing that's been chemically treated. We prefer, with a huge preference, certified organic, but we're not 100% certified organic yet. And we have, we work to a fairly narrow flavor profile. We know what we want the product to taste like, and we make sure that we get it. We've had sometimes, even with, what you might think is a really pedestrian spice, like ginger. And our source for ginger, which for many years was absolutely unbelievably good. From the exact same provider, exact same farm, they sent us some product that had kind of an earthy flavor, just it wasn't the same. And it took us probably 6 months and sampling 20, 30, 40 different lots from different vendors until we could get back to that super pure, lemony, fresh ginger flavor in dry ginger. So sourcing is really, really important. And then the next is freshness. From the standpoint of sourcing, we only sell product that's the most current harvest, so it's fresh from that standpoint. But we also made a commitment that we were going to do all of the processing, most significantly the milling ourselves. We've invested in 4 different milling technologies, and we do all the production right here in our facility in Marysville. And we do it in lots that we generally sell out within about 30 days. So if you're buying our product, it's very, very fresh. If you're buying product, say, at a grocery store, the estimate of the American Spice Trade Association is it takes about a year after it's been milled before you can just put on the shelf.
It's true. Your products are extremely fresh. I actually did a video from your store, and we have someone named Christopher watching who says, "Great products, great people, Marysville proud." You have a charming little store there. It's funny. I've told this story before, but when my mother passed away, she had a metal thing of the Coleman's mustard, and I swear to God, it was the same one that when I was like, 10 years old. And so you can't just keep spices forever, right? It's not like that they're going to hurt you, but they lose their potency, don't they?
Yeah, they do. So what happens is the flavor in spices, which, and actually what causes the flavor is actually the same thing for the most part that gives us the health benefit from spices. They're biochemicals that are called flavonoids and flavanols, but they reside within essential oils within the spice. And the essential oils, when they're exposed to oxygen, volatilize and they lose their potency. So once you mill it, you've exposed the entirety of the product to the oxygen, and it smells great and it tastes great. It tastes the best then, but it does volatilize relatively quickly and it loses its flavor. You don't have, exactly as you said, you don't have to throw old spices away because you're afraid you're going to get hurt. It's not going to go bad, but they do lose their flavor. And there are things that you can do that can restore the flavor to some extent, particularly with herbs. You can just put them in your hands and rub them as you put them into the pan. That helps. Running them quickly through a coffee grinder or spice mill helps. Or lightly toasting them on a dry saute pan over the stove will also will volatilize the essential oils and release the aromatics and restore some of the flavor.
Nice. So if you just joined us, I'm talking to Nick Davoren from local Spicery in Marysville, but S. Hess says, "I thought they were in Tiburon. I grew up there. Aren't they on the street?"
So we do have a store in Tiburon, and as you probably know, both of the stores we've had to close down because of the virus. That was our first store in downtown Tiburon. In fact, I grew up like you in Tiburon, out on Paradise Drive. We started out our production actually in Novato in Lorraine County, just up the road from Tiburon. And a few years back, we closed that down. We bought our building in Marysville, and we were able to set it up exactly the way we wanted. So we're very proud of it and very happy with it and happy with the decision. But we do get down to Tiburon frequently. My daughter runs a store down there. We're very, very connected to what's happening.
Very nice. Somebody that joined late said, do you ship to Canada? And right now, no, he doesn't ship to any other countries. But Natalie made a good point. Many Canadians live close enough to the US border to retrieve shipments from south of the border after it opens up again. And I've heard about that, where some Canadians either have a PO box or somebody where they can get the delivery there.
We do have customers that tell us they do that. We know we have one that's in British Columbia that has a friend in California. The friend orders the stuff for them, and then when they visit, they exchange.
So when the crisis has lifted, she or he, I can't tell, it's just the letter S, will take the ferry over. So he did mention that not all of his products are organic, and he'll talk about that if you like, but they are I can't even say that word. Are most spices irradiated?
So almost all spices are treated. And so the two main sources of treatment are ethylene oxide, which is a chemical fumigation, or irradiation. Irradiation is relatively new. I mean, new in the last 20 years to the industry, and it's gaining in popularity, becoming increasingly popular. Probably 90% or better of the spices sold in the country have been either irradiated or fumigated with ethylene oxide.
Right, and yours are all non-irritated. What I love is they come in glass jars, because we have a question from Linda. How do you recommend using the pepperoni spice? And I want to talk about this because this is how I actually met Nick. I wish you guys can smell this, is because I don't even remember where I read or heard about the pepperoni spice, and I don't consume any salt. So many of his not salt blends, many of his spice blends are already salt-free, SOS-free, salt, oil, and sugar. And I was intrigued by this because in culinary school, we actually did make sausage, and we made our own pepperoni spice blend, and it was just a pain in the butt to keep all those spices on hands. And I fell in love with this. So Linda, the way I use it is I will make pepperoni mushrooms in the air fryer, and I'll use that as a pizza topping. But this is good in everything. This is good just on French fries, and this is just this stuff, it just rocks my world. And if you're a first-time orderer and thinking of placing an order, I mean, all of his spices are great, but I think that you will not be disappointed in the pepperoni spice if you're going savory. And if you're going more sweet, and I have my 12 favorite spices in front of me to show you a bunch of them. If you're going more sweet, then, probably my favorite is the gingerbread spice. But that said, I also really like the pumpkin pie spice and the apple pie spice if you're going sweet. But like if somebody put a gun to my head and said I could only have two, it would be pepperoni and, where'd it go? I just put it down. Pepperoni and gingerbread are probably my two favorites. So, and if you joined us late, what's really cool is he makes my recipes in these little like matches where you open it up and everything's there and measured, and then you got the recipe. You don't have to look it up. So that's pretty cool if you ask me.
We're excited about those. The matchbooks are not yet available for sale. We're hoping to get them in full production soon. We'll have them up on the website. Just for those of you that follow us on Facebook, you'll definitely get an announcement that way or from our one of our newsletters. But we hope to get them out and available very soon. We're excited about it. It's
Lori asks, is it true that there's a crisis in the world with the bee population, and that will affect the spice production in the world?
It's true there's a crisis with the bee population, and it affects the entirety of the agricultural world. I don't know that it affects spices more directly than others. To my knowledge, the crisis in the bee population is mostly in highly developed areas, maybe linked to the use of certain agricultural chemicals that you don't find in the areas where most of the spices are grown. Spices tend to be grown in third world countries in very, very small, less than an acre subsistence level farms. It's part of the challenge, but it's also part of the beauty of the spice industry. The way that those kinds of flavors are coaxed out, it can only be done in very, very small quantities like that. But I have not heard it specifically being an issue with spices.
Great. Sunny just said she used your za'atar spice. Hopefully I pronounced that right. And Leisha says apple pie is out of stock.
We'll get right on that. We actually just packaged up a bunch of apple pie, and we'll get it up on the website probably today.
Very good. So when I was little, I liked three cartoons the most. I loved the Jetsons, the Flintstones, and Scooby-Doo. And at one point, they made a movie where the Jetsons and the Flintstones actually got together. And so right here we have watching Thomas Allen from California Balsamic, who makes a wonderful comment about send a package near the border to any post office and put the name under general delivery. That way the person doesn't need a post office box. So Thomas makes the wonderful California Balsamic vinegars, and he and Nick are going to they're going to partner hopefully and like so what Thomas is going to do attempt to do, and I think he'll be successful, is take some of the amazing flavors of local spicery and put them in California balsamic vinegar. So how cool is that? And these are great guys. If you've come to any of my conferences or Linda Middlesworth, you've seen them. They're just as nice as they can be, and their products are incredible. Let me show you a few more of my favorites. Those were if I had to pick two, but there's some really, really interesting flavors, and maybe Nick can talk about them. I don't speak Italian. Sol della Toscana garlic tomato blend is absolutely delicious. And of course, there's one called Depth that's very, very cool for people that aren't using salt. And even just some of his regular ones, like the chili pepper is very, very good. And his cinnamon is incredible. And one of the things I learned from Nick, where is this? I have it here. The sun-dried tomato powder is different than the tomato powder that you can buy really cheaply online. It's a whole different ballgame.
Yeah, most vast majority, 90%, maybe even more, of what's sold as tomato powder in the United States was created using a thermal spray process. Basically, what they do is they liquefy whole tomatoes. There are chemicals that are added to make them flow more easily, and they're injected and then sprayed in a fine stream through a heat source, so that as it gets cooked and drops, it drops as a powder. We follow a different and much more time-consuming process. We get sun-dried tomatoes from a provider who also then dehydrates them to a very, very dry product. We have to have almost no moisture in them to be able to run them through the mill, and we mill them down to a powder here. So when you taste it, you know, you don't get the astringent, acidic flavors of the spray dried tomatoes. It's a richer, sweeter. It tastes like sun-dried tomatoes.
Yeah, it's incredible. Gina says, I know they say to only keep spices 6 months, but what spices can you keep longer than others?
So 6 months is a bit shorter than, we say a year. And it kind of depends on where you got them and how old they were when you got them. As I mentioned earlier, if you're buying our product from us or at one of our stores, it's going to be very fresh and produced very, very recently. If you're buying it at a store, just assume it's at least a year old already when you get it. US FDA guidelines is for spices, for milled spices, it's 2 years. I'm sorry, for herbs, it's 2 years, and for milled spices, it's 4 years. But our experience is that at the end of a year, you really have lost a significant amount of the aromatics and the flavor. And it's not a question of me trying to say, throw things out after a year. What I'm trying to say is buy them and use them. When you buy it, think this is what I'm going to use in a year or less. And the reason why you're buying spices is not to have them sit on the shelf like a book in a library. Is to take it out and read it, to cook with it. And they're there to explore and have fun with.
Yep, absolutely. Matthew says, can I use the pepperoni blend when I make seitan pepperoni? Why not? I think that would be perfect. Yeah,
absolutely. I wanted to roll back a little bit on on Thomas. I hope he's still watching because
yeah, he says you're going to get married. Thomas posted, we're going to get married.
Hey, the collaboration with Thomas, it's Thomas's project. Thomas is the chef, and I'm just doing my best to support him. It's his idea. We're sending some spices. We've got some ideas, but he's working on some very creative ideas, and I'm excited to see what comes out of it. And really excited just to get a chance to work with him. Let's just say he's a very, very nice guy, and love it whenever the phone rings and we see that it's him on the other end.
Well, it's so great that I was able to connect you two, just like I was able to connect Thomas by doing the live broadcast with his long lost cousin, Leslie. So that's one thing I love to do. Mary says that will be wonderful to combine local spicery spices with California balsamic vinegars. I can't wait to try the new products and flavors. So what is your best-selling spice?
So, pepperoni's up there, believe it or not. Overall, I think probably the two best sellers of spices are the pepperoni and we have a product called Stinson. It was originally blended as a steak rub. It does have some salt, of a very, very small amount of salt. But the Stinson is a lovely product and it's very, very versatile. It's good on just about anything. Very nice on vegetables, but it does have a bit of salt to it.
Very nice. Linda Middlesworth, whose conference you've attended, says, I'm going to order for spices from now on. Very good.
So anybody on this that's viewing this, when you get on our website, you want to search for SOS free, because we do have a landing page on the website that extracts all of the SOS spices, so you won't be buying anything inadvertently that has some salt in it. We don't add any oil to anything. And we do have 2 or 3 spices where we add sugar. We don't like to do it, but for some flavors you have to. But go to the SOS free landing page and you'll be safe.
Nice. Kathy in Southern California said, I just placed my first order with local Spicery. Got it 2 days ago. Very good. Glad to hear that. And somebody said they were going to order this soon. So very good. And for first timers, like what do you recommend if they've never ordered for you before? Like, so that,
So it depends on how you cook, but I'm going to go with the SOS free diet on this. People that are, my wife and I are both following a vegan diet. I would say my wife is there. I'm getting there. We are predominantly plant-based, and what we find is you end up cooking a lot of what I call neutral palettes. These are your starches. These are your potatoes, your sweet potatoes, your rice, your grains. And the flavors that tend to go really well with them, and it's also what makes cooking really easy, is to go with a fully developed flavor. So the pepperoni is great because pepperoni spice, you could just sit and eat it and it would taste like pepperoni. And if you put it on a potato, it would taste like pepperoni. Another one that's really good that you mentioned along those lines is the Soli della Toscana. Soli della Toscana, it's a fully developed flavor. Was not intended as a complementing flavor, it's a soloist. It's garlic, it's sun-dried tomato, rosemary, and porcini mushroom, a little bit of Calabrian chili. Gingerbread, which you mentioned also, same sort of thing. It's a fully developed flavor, goes extremely well on these neutral palettes. The curries are very, very easy to work with a neutral palette. We have 3 Indian curries. We do the madras, which a lot of people know of. Actually, I'm sorry, 2 Indian curries. We do madras and we do the Davoren. They're both southern India, but the Davoren is from Pondicherry, has a strong French influence, sometimes called the French curry. Extremely aromatic and bright, and goes very, very well with vegetables. We also have a curry from South Africa, which is inching up and becoming our most popular curry, the bull crop curry. Great with vegetables, great with starches. And then, I like the Moroccan blends. So we have one that's called La Cama. La Cama is, the softer, kinder of the curries, of the Moroccan curries. It's light, it's floral, it goes very well with almost anything, it's slightly sweet. And then there's the Ras El Hanout, which is the angry big brother of the La Cama, and it is just a total spice bomb. Still the same sort of a flavor profile. Those would be good ones to start with. I would go with the big flavors and work with them on your starches. You'll be happy.
Yeah, I mean, the gingerbread spice is really good in oatmeal, as is the pumpkin pie spice. I also use it in rice pudding. And like tomorrow's my 25th wedding anniversary. And I made, I hope my husband's not watching, I made him a carrot cake. And instead of cinnamon, I used the gingerbread spice.
Oh, good idea.
Yeah. So Alicia, who said the apple pie spice was out, it's back in stock as of right now, because she said she was ready to place an order. And Mary and Gina are saying, and I don't know how to pronounce this, what is achiote or axiote?
So the achiote, it does have salt. And it's a low salt blend, but it does have salt in it. You just have to caution you. Achiote is a traditional Central American blend from the Yucatan. It's based on a spice of the same name that's native to the Yucatan, and is primarily used today as a colorant. It's not frequently used as a spice, but it's one of my favorite flavors. So if you're looking for a way to do a very, very traditional, a taco or a Central American flavored dish, you'd be very happy. I have to admit, we've done it on sweet potatoes, and it's fantastic in the air fryer, but it's not salt-free. We've tried it salt-free, and just you can't get that one there yet. We're slowly going through the canon and finding what we can reformulate to salt-free, but we're not there yet with the achiote.
Nice. Yeah. And so, yes, there was a question about, are some of the spices salt-free? Absolutely. That's why there's a dedicated page. Is it just your website, localspicery.com/something? I can type it in.
Not that simple. Go localspicery.com, and actually, I don't know if my wife can come in and help me with the navigation.
That's okay.
I can't remember. There's a line of bars across the top.
Sure. Don't worry about it. I'll see if I can find it while you're answering the next question. Is with this virus, it's going to be a while for everything to get back to normal, but is that going to affect your ability to actually produce the spices?
Absolutely. So there's going to be a lot of, in fact, there already is tremendous impact in the spice trade from this coronavirus. It's began with disruptions in the supply chain, where it's harder to get product across borders. It's harder, in certain areas to harvest and produce the product, and there is currently a very high demand. So people that we've been working with for years to get product from, where we could get it turned around very quickly. Now it's taking several weeks just to get something ordered and something brought around. But we're also finding that because things are getting more difficult, the companies are focusing on the product that they can make the most money off of. And so, this what we're looking for, which is the extremely high quality, high flavor, and in the whole form. Most places are carrying less and less and less of that. We've been cautioned by more than one importer that they're focusing on their pre-ground product because they can get it in cheaper. Product that we've been able to get certified organic for 7 years, all of a sudden we can only get it if it's been treated. For us, we've discussed it. We've decided that we're not going to take a step down from our expectations for quality. We're going to stay with extremely high quality. Our expectation is over the course of this year, we're probably going to have to put many of our very, very popular spice blends on a sabbatical. And we're planning on focusing on becoming a much lighter, more nimble, more creative company. We'll be doing a lot of specials. I like to say it's almost like we're going to be the kind of a restaurant where you want to listen to the waiter and order off the special menu rather than take a look at what's on the 8-page menu, because we're going to have to be doing, making product based on what we can get rather than we used to be able to get pretty much everything.
I was able to find that link and I just posted it, you guys. So all you have to do now, instead of just clicking the previous link I posted, Local Spicery, click the link I just posted, localspicery.com. It's the SOS free page, so it'll take you right there. Okay. Nick, why are some spices so expensive? For example, vanilla powder or vanilla in general, and saffron. What makes them so expensive?
So it's of the expensive. There's a story behind every one, as you know. Vanilla has always been expensive. Vanilla is expensive because there's only one bee in the entire world that will pollinate a vanilla flower, and that bee is endemic to the Veracruz Valley in Mexico. It won't live anywhere else. So unless you're getting your product from Veracruz, and almost none of the product for sale today is from Veracruz, the vanilla has to be hand pollinated, which is, that's one thing that makes it very expensive, but also, each vanilla plant will only have 3 beans. So, you need a lot of vanilla plants to make up your vanilla. Then the vanilla market has been impacted by two bad seasons in a row. The first one, we saw an increase in price of about 40. They wiped out about 40% of the world vanilla crop in Madagascar, and prices doubled that year. You know, in this industry, 100% is not an atypical shift in pricing, but the year following, the Chinese in the futures market cornered a huge amount of the vanilla harvest, and they had a second tropical storm in Madagascar that again took out 30–40% of the product. So they ended up owning 100% of the harvest, and they tripled the price. So the price of vanilla literally went up sixfold over 2 years, and it's slowly coming back down, but not coming down as fast as it went up. Saffron, saffron is as a spice, it's the stamen from the crocus flower. You know, and each flower only has 3 stamens, and they have to be hand harvested. So when you buy just a gram of saffron for $12, that's the stamina from 150 flowers, and it takes about 6 hours to harvest. So very, very labor intensive, and it's only a small band of the world where saffron can be grown anyway. So that's the story on saffron. Saffron's been relatively stable. The big story this year that's hitting us is the cost of cardamom, which has always kind of been considered one of the more expensive. Sometimes they've said it's the second or third most expensive spice. But this year we got a double whammy, and the harvests in both Guatemala and in India got hit for different reasons. And so the wholesale price of cardamom is at least 100%, and it's very, very hard to find and almost impossible to find organic product right now for cardamom.
Wow.
So it's kind of fun. It keeps you on your toes. You have to stay abreast of what's happening in the world with weather and politics and everything.
Just so you know that sometimes the answer to your question gets typed. So Mary had a question if the spices were dairy free, and yes, they are all dairy free. And I love how people on the live are chatting with each other, and they recognize the names from days before, and they're saying hello to each other. That's really wonderful. So Florence had a question of, you mentioned you had different curry blends. Could you rate them from mildest to hottest?
So first thing I'll say is I don't generally make hot curries. Most of my blends, I'll hold back on the heat, and not because I don't like heat. I like heat, but it's always easy to add heat. So any person with just a basic culinary ability can add some heat to almost anything. So you're not of the curry type flavors, the hottest thing we sell is Berber, and we do have Berber in a salt-free blend. It's a wonderful blend from Ethiopia and Eritrea, but it is quite fiery. It's like a cross between a chili powder and a curry blend. And from there, it's a steep climb down to not really very hot. Probably the least hot of all of our curries is the Bokak. That's the South African curry. In the canon Bokak curry, the main heat source is supposed to be black mustard seed. So the heat is kind of a more of a horseradish kind of a flavor than a curry flavor, than a chili flavor. But it does have some chilies in it. But beyond that, they're all about the same, and I would characterize them as slightly hotter than black pepper.
Nice.
Now my black pepper's hot though.
Debbie wants to know what's the difference of your different cinnamons that you offer.
Right. So there are 4 species of cinnamon that are used for culinary purposes, and we carry 3. And the reason why we only carry 3 is because when you get to the high end of flavor, the 2 are fairly close together. So the Ceylon cinnamon, which out of all of them is the only one that is a true cinnamon. They're all cinnamon. They're all in the cinnamomum family. But the species for the Ceylon is Cinnamomum vera, which is true cinnamon. It looks different in the quill, and very, very different flavor. Extremely mild. I use it a lot in in savory dishes. Although my wife uses it as a sweetener, she puts it in her oatmeal. I have more of a sweet tooth, and I go for the Saigon cinnamon, which is much sweeter. Don't underestimate the Ceylon cinnamon, because it's a great way that you can add a cinnamon flavor to a dish without it, just completely taking over the dish. So when you want your cinnamon flavor to combine well with other flavors, like with fruits, Ceylon's a good choice. In the middle is Indonesian cassia. It is a cassia, so it has a much stronger flavor, higher quantity of coumarin. Think 80%, 90% of the cinnamon that's sold in the United States is an Indonesian cassia. So that's kind of the target flavor profile for it. You'll find that ours will be richer and stronger than you used to, mostly because it's freshly milled, but also because we get ours from the Kerinci region in Indonesia, which is considered the best region in all of Indonesia for cinnamon. And then at the top of the list for flavor is the Saigon. Saigon cinnamon is it's very strong flavor, almost hot, like a red hot, and super sweet. I've had customers come back after buying it and try to argue with me, saying that there's sugar in it, but it's just that the bark of the cinnamon tree, intensely sweet. I put just a tiny bit in my oatmeal, and I'm very happy. And of the Saigon cinnamon, there are two distinct species that are both interchangeably called Saigon. There's the cinnamon morelwa and the cinnamon cassia. Right now, we're selling the cinnamon cassia.
Yeah, it's so true about it. I didn't believe that it wasn't sugar when I tasted it. It was incredible. Gina says, do you travel all over the world trying the spices? You're so interesting. You could write a book about the story of each spice.
So my wife and I have both traveled a lot. We both, when we travel, we eat, and sometimes we cook. We've done a little bit of travel as a part of our job, and our intention is to travel more. We do get out. We have plans for a trip later this year to Europe. Hopefully, we're going to be there in time for the Pinot de Splet festival in the south of France in the Basque region, and we're hoping to get into some of the fields to taste some of the different pimentons in Spain, northern Spain.
Pat says, profiling curry is very interesting. Black mustard seed, eh?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, it's wonderful. If you're curious about the bokap, I like to think of the bokap as a perfect mix between a Caribbean curry and an Indian curry. On the nose, you smell it, and you think you're going to have a very traditional Indian curry, but it's got some of that mustardy sweet flavor that you get from the Caribbean curries. It's very tasty, very forgiving, very easy to work with.
Pat says, life just wouldn't be the same without vanilla. And Lori says, I went to Tahiti into a vanilla farm, and they have to hand pollinate the flowers, and it takes a lot of time, so it's expensive. And my neighbor and friend Lisa, who's one of the only vegans where I live now, just went to Tahiti. Well, not just, but before the lockdown, and brought me, and it came in like a test tube, Tahitian vanilla. And it's so good. I'm just afraid to use it. It's like amazing.
So interesting story about Tahitian vanilla for many years, because the flavor is so different from the Veracruz, or more commonly now the Madagascan vanilla. 90% of the vanilla in the world is grown in Madagascar right now. They used to believe that Tahitian vanilla was in fact a distinct species, and that we call it the Tahitiensis. But since the advent of high-tech genetics and looking at the makeup of the genome, they've been able to determine that it actually is just plain Yola, the same species. It's a slightly different cultivar, but mostly it's the terroir of the region in Tahiti that gives you that. It's a lighter flavor, and sort of like think about what I was saying about the flavor of the Ceylon cinnamon. Lighter flavor, but when you have a lighter flavor some of the soft flavors, the floral tones, the woody tones rise to the surface, and that's what you get in the Tahitian vanilla.
Nice. Jesse says, we answered this, but I know sometimes people join later. Do spices on local Spicery website that are not part of the SOS friendly group have salt and or sugar added to them? Definitely nothing has oil. And
Right.
he only uses those other two items if he can't get the flavor that he requires without it, because he wasn't SOS free when I met him. So he had a store, just like Thomas has oil, because, these are gentlemen that I've met, really just within the last year, and they're just producing more and more stuff for us. And it's just absolutely incredible. How many years have you been interested in working with spices? Gina wants to know.
I think I've always been interested. I've always, even since I was a little kid, loved to cook. And the part of cooking that I always loved the most, what I thought of when I thought of cooking, was seasoning. And it's just what I gravitated towards, and it's what I love to do. My wife and I, Evelyn, we had talked, I'll bet we talked about starting the spice business for 10 years before we finally did it. It was just something, it was prevalent throughout our lives of things that were important to us. And in our own cooking, we knew that, by buying whole spices and milling them ourselves, that we could create much better flavors than are available at the store. It really is amazing to me how different the flavor can be when they're fresh. That there was something out there that we could be providing that people weren't getting. So it's been in me for a long time, but we've had the business for about 7-8 years now. We started out first couple of years just selling at farmers markets, but it's not the kind of, the only way you get into this business is to jump in with both feet. There's no college degree in spicery. No training manuals. You just have to get in and figure it out. It was a lot of work, but that frankly was part of what attracted us about it. My wife and I are both people that like a challenge, and yeah.
What did you do before you were the spice guy?
So we both had long careers in the engineering and construction industry. I worked for a large global engineering company, which is where I did a lot of my travel. I basically was the guy that had to go and find the biggest projects for the company. So I went all over the world, wherever countries were spending lots of money on their infrastructure. And Evelyn worked for a global construction management company, sort of a similar role. But interesting, in our lives before that, before we met, Evelyn started her professional career working at a grocery store chain in their corporate headquarters. So she kind of has the food industry in her blood from very early on. And for me, I put myself through college managing restaurants, and always had a strong appreciation for culinary arts.
Nice. Do you list the ingredients for the spice blends on your website? Because
you do not. And if you have any questions, please feel free just to call us at the mill. It's area code 530-763-5353.
Why don't you repeat that a little bit slower?
It's area code 530-763-5353. And we're happy to tell you what's in every jar. We're not trying to hide it. The reason why we used to list them all, but we do from time to time have to make small changes in the recipe based on what's available, based on the way that things are tasting. Sometimes they'll change, and we're required by law to list them in order of content by weight. And when you're pushing 350 different SKUs, it's a lot to maintain on the website, and we just felt that we couldn't maintain it anymore. So
that makes absolute sense. Tammy says, what region do you find produces the best Ceylon cinnamon? I find that all Ceylon cinnamon are not equal.
I would agree they're not all equal, but I do not know the different growing regions in Sri Lanka. There is Ceylon cinnamon that is grown in Indonesia. We have never purchased it, so I can't tell you what the difference is from an Indonesian to a Sri Lankan. And Sri Lanka historically was known as Ceylon, so it's where it is endemic to. So I don't have the answer to that, but I hope one day in the very near future to get to Sri Lanka, and I'll have an answer for you.
Nice. Gina says a cookbook. Why don't you write this the vegan spice Bible? They have this book like the flavor Bible and the vegetarian
Yeah,
flavor Bible. Why don't you write like a book, or all of us SOS free chefs could submit recipes using your spices? Because I have a couple of chefs I'd like to talk to you about that I think would be really good at figuring things out like that.
that'd be a really fun project. Love to do something like that.
So I hear you have 3 new spices this year. Do you want to say what they are? Because you didn't used to have a jalapeno powder.
Yeah, so we have, I mean, these 3 are new. They're available right now, and we have a list of things we're working on for moving into this year. Let me see if I have them here.
Yeah, so Z-Hug. Talk about Z-Hug first, because that did
Yeah,
the salt-free.
so the zhug and yeah, zhug.
I call it Z-Hug. It's spelled Z''Huz.
So what I've read is it's when you say it, it's guttural, almost supposed to sound like you're clearing your throat. Zhug is a wonderful flavor, and we've had it for a while, available with salt. We only recently reformulated it so you can offer it salt-free. It's a spice blend that originated in Yemen, but it's found throughout the Middle East, and it's in the Middle East it's like harissa. It's a condiment. It's a sauce, and you would find it at your table when you sit down to eat. And it's driven by the flavors of chili. It's got some citrus flavors. In fact, it's one of the few spices that we put citric acid in. It's the only way that I could get the a really tangy flavor, and without the salt, we had to do the citric acid. But also, it's got some good Mediterranean flavors, a strong profile of cumin. I use it just like you would use a chili powder. A good general seasoning that goes great on anything. We'll put it on top of hummus. We'll sprinkle it on top of roasted vegetables or air fryer potatoes. It really can go on almost anything. It gives it a very distinctive, clearly Middle Eastern flavor, but palatable to almost anybody and very, very easy to use.
What about cinnamon rose? Tell us about that.
So cinnamon rose, the name of it is Ann Davis. It has a local story here in Marysville. Cinnamon rose is exactly what it sounds like. We blend that in the mill. We put whole cinnamon sticks and whole rose buds in the mill together and mill them down to a fine powder. The name Ann Davis, our building is on historic First Street in historic Marysville, and First Street is in the historic Chinatown, which where they had a lot of not totally legal activities occurring. And Ann Davis was the notorious madam of First Street in Marysville. But it is a light, sweet, floral flavor. Cinnamon and rose go extremely well together. We use it the same way that you would cinnamon in almost any recipe. Mostly think of it in terms of recipes where the predominant flavor coming through is cinnamon. My daughter has done snickerdoodle cookies with the cinnamon rose. You can put it on anything. It's great on it's great in applesauce. It's great on oatmeal. So anytime you use cinnamon, it's a way to bring rose in. For me, the use of rose culinarily always makes me think of Persian food. It's very, very tasty.
It does sound incredible. Lori says, is there a ratio of how much of a dried spice is equal to the same spice in fresh form? And I love that question, especially because it's hard. It's so hard to get to the grocery store now. And I don't even want to risk my life going to the grocery store and having things that everybody else has touched. So, order from the local Spicery, because the only one that touched it was Nick.
So the answer, what I use is 3-to-1. I usually assume it's about three times as much fresh product to the dry product. I know that works out definitely with herbs, but I use the same with spices, and I think it works for me.
You have a Thai curry coming soon, a tikka masala, and a teriyaki. That's going to be
Yeah.
amazing.
So that the tikka masala, we're gonna get that out very soon. I've actually I created that for a restaurant customer. They've been using it for a while, and it is a very good tikka masala. Very traditional flavoring, not at all one of these overly sweet westernized tikka masala. You recognize it right away. The Thai curry sweet is something I've been working on for a long time, and I've been frustrated with it, but I've recently had a breakthrough on it, and no question we'll be able to get the Thai curries out. We'll do a red curry, a yellow curry, and a green curry. And the teriyaki is exciting to me because I've been trying to do a teriyaki blend for a while, but the only ones that were working for me is if I used a dried soy sauce powder, which is a highly processed product, and I just wasn't happy with it. I just couldn't see myself offering that, but it just recently dawned on me that I can get that same sort of a flavor from porcini mushroom. So the teriyaki is going to be, the counter positioned porcini on the umami side, and then the sweetness is coming from a freeze-dried pineapple.
That's
So,
terrific.
yeah.
How about opening a store near Palm Springs? Because it's so much funner to be able to come and taste each one.
I'd love to do it. You want to run it for me?
Maybe if there could be a cooking school attached to it, for sure. Gina said, I ordered Berber, not realizing how hot it is. Any recommendation what I can mix it with to tone down the heat?
For me, with the Berber, I would just back off on the quantity. It's a very big flavor, and just a little bit can go a long way. I find that you can put small quantities on Berber and still be happy with it. If that's not satisfying you and you need to cut it further, yeah, I guess it would kind of depend on what you're using it on. You could just go with a very light chili like California chili. California chili is an almost completely heat-free chili. One of my favorite. It's a secret ingredient. So many people think that chilies have to be hot. When you talk about the flavor profile of chilies, the first thing people want to talk about is the heat. But the California chili's got a lovely, very sweet, rich flavor, and almost no heat would be a good way to cut the flavor of the burger, I think.
Great. Katie, you must be joining us late because she said there's no ingredient list on the website, and that's because he has over 300 blends, and it would be an administrative nightmare if he had to always change it, because every now and then things are tweaked based on availability. But you can call him anytime. He's given his phone number. He'll tell you exactly what is in each blend. When I've been looking at these blends, I've been reading them. And what is a long pepper? That's in one of the spices. I never heard of long pepper. Is it just a pepper that's long?
No, it's a different species. It's in the same family. It's in the pepper family. It's endemic to India, but they grow them in. There are two main cultivars, one from India and one from Indonesia. It looks kind of like a black peppercorn, but it's long and narrow, maybe like a little tiny baby pine cone. In flavor, it doesn't carry the same heat that a black peppercorn does, but it has a very complex, rich umami flavor to it. When you go ahead.
Oh, I'm allergic to black pepper. Would I be able to eat long pepper?
Yeah, you and I have talked about it, and it is in the same family. It does have piperine, which is the main biochemical in black pepper, so you might have a reaction to it.
Somebody told me you could take those black seeds from a papaya and make like pepper out of them. Have you ever heard of that?
No, I haven't tried that.
I'll look it up. Maybe you could do that. That would be, the thing is when you're allergic to something, it becomes like you don't like it anyway. You've learned to not like it because of the reactions. So I don't really even like the taste of black pepper because I just know what it does to me. So that's what's a Calabrian chili that I'm seeing on one of these?
It's a chili from Calabria, Italy. They are hot, but they're intensely sweet and very bright and tangy flavored. The heat, though, see, one of the interesting things is European chilies, the heat profile is the heat comes on all at once and it dissipates in a matter of seconds compared to the Central American chilies, where the heat profile comes on slowly and it builds. So, Central American profile, the more you eat, the hotter it gets. With the Calabrians, you'll taste it, you'll get the heat right away, but in a matter of seconds, you're ready to have another bite. I love to use it because of the sweetness and the brightness and the brilliance of it. It's a great way to add heat and still, bring a bright, light flavor.
Florence wants to know, what is Berber?
So it's a spice blend from Ethiopia and Eritrea. If you've had Ethiopian food, if you've ever had doro lot, which is kind of the national dish of Ethiopia, it's a stew that is usually made either with chicken or with lentils. For this conversation, let's say lentils. It is hot and spicy. It's half curry, half chili powder. It's a blend of chilies to get the chili flavor, and then the curry flavors are fenugreek and cardamom primarily. It's a great. It's one of my favorite flavors. It goes extreme for us that are following a plant-based diet. It's amazing on sweet potatoes. It's amazing on squash. It's good on air fried potatoes. Corn on the cob. Oh.
Sounds delicious. So last question, what's the difference between freeze-dried spices and spices? Because sometimes you go to the store and you'll see things like onion, or, it'll say freeze-dried or chives freeze-dried. How is that different than when you just see chives and it doesn't say freeze-dried? Meaning it's already not refrigerated, but in a jar.
Freeze drying is great for a couple of reasons. First of all, when the product is freeze-dried, they get out almost 100% of the moisture. And because of that, it'll last longer. Freeze-dried product, the FDA says 2 years for sun-dried herbs. I would probably double that with freeze-dried herbs, so you can hang on to them longer. But most of them, you'll find that the flavor in freeze-dried herbs is closer to the flavor of the fresh herbs. Not in all of them. Interesting story, when we first started this spice company, one of the things that my wife and I really wanted to do was buy huge quantities of organically grown herbs and send them to a contact dryer and have them freeze dried and sell them as freeze dried herbs. We ended up that just would not ever pencil out just because the cost of fresh produce, even in very large quantities in the United States, is much higher than almost anywhere else. To my knowledge, 100% of the freeze-dried herbs, with the exception of chives. Chives and green peppercorn. But beyond that, most of the freeze-dried herbs are being made by a company called Lighthouse, and the product is being freeze-dried in Germany and generally grown in Europe. And that was in our model. We found that we could actually buy product from Lighthouse for less than it would cost us to make it here in the United States. But it's a wonderful product. We used to carry herbs in both freeze-dried and in the traditional sun-dried. Not enough people were buying the freeze-dried. They just didn't understand it. But be a good thing to buy. I do like it.
Yeah. What is Jin Yang? Does it have a pineapple-y sweet?
No, it's not sweet. So Jin Yang is our own creation. It's kind of a classic Cantonese flavor. It pairs extremely well with vegetables. It's driven by the flavor of Szechuan peppercorn and cumin. So I guess best way to describe it would be, think like a Chinese five spice, but without the sweet flavor. So it's a very, very savory Chinese five spice kind of flavor. It does carry some heat, slightly hotter than a black peppercorn, and it does have a fair amount of black peppercorn in it. But it's a beautiful flavor. I like working with that a lot.
Nice. Well, that's great. So if you guys have any more questions, just like Thomas from California Balsamic, Nick actually answers his phone. So call him up and place an order. Really, if you can't decide what to get, then get my two favorites, tried and true, the pepperoni spice and the gingerbread spice. Well, it's just been so fun talking to you, Nick. I love learning about this. It's wonderful, especially people that are not eating SOS, sugar, oil, and salt, to have such a wide variety of options now on our food. So thank you for making them and making them so healthfully.
AJ, it's great to see you. Hope to see you in person soon.
Same here. And come back tomorrow at 2 p.m. when I'll be talking to Dr. Yami about feeding children healthfully. So thanks for everybody and take care. And thanks again, Nick.
Thank you,
Bye-bye.
AJ. Good to see you.
Bye.